Dusty May is leaving Michigan for the NBA, a move that could greatly benefit Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster. Today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Well, the 2027 updated class rankings are out from 247 Sports. They have a surprising fall for a Zag target who has played very well on the summer circuit. We're going to talk about that to close out the show. But first, the big seismic shift that happened in college basketball on Monday morning, right before the NBA draft. The news that Dusty May, the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, national champions last year, a coach who's been to the Final Four twice in the last 3 seasons, is moving on from college basketball. He has taken the head coaching job of the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA. This is a move that has significant ripple effects all across college basketball. But we're going to focus, of course, today on what it means for Gonzaga specifically. We're going to talk about the fact that Michigan's players now can enter the transfer portal, what that might mean for Gonzaga. We'll talk about their incoming freshman class, potential for some of those players to decommit. We'll even talk a little bit about what this move means for Ryan Nembhard, who, of course, spent his rookie season playing for Dallas under Jason Kidd, and will now play for Dusty May, a coach who college basketball the last couple of years, was tremendous at Florida Atlantic, led the Owls on that miraculous run all the way to the Final Four as a 9 seed. They were a Lamont Butler mid-range jump shot away from going all the way to the national championship game, a very, very small school out of the American Conference. I don't even think they were in the American Conference yet when that happened. That loaded team with Elijah Martin and John L. Davis and Vlad Golden, and just a superstar roster at FAU. Dusty May parlayed that into a move to Michigan to take over as the head coach of the Wolverines. Spent 2 years at Michigan. They were phenomenal in his first year, where he brought over Vlad Golden from that FAU team. Also added a transfer in Danny Wolf from Yale, and they were excellent. And then this year they were even better. They go out and get Yaxel Lendeberg from UAB. They get Adai Mara from UCLA, Morez Johnson from Illinois, Elliot Cadeau from North Carolina, a ridiculously stacked roster. Roddy Gale was back. Trey McKenney coming in as a freshman. LJ Cason was back. And that team rolled. Gonzaga saw them, of course, in the Players Era Festival. They beat them by 40 in the championship of that game. Went on to win a huge chunk of their games by around 40 points, and then rolled through the NCAA tournament, crushed Arizona in the Final Four, and then secured a win over UConn in the national championship game. An incredible season for Dusty May. For Gonzaga in the short term, one of the ways that this potentially impacts them is that they might have lined up. They still might line up against Michigan in the Players Era Festival again this season. Gonzaga's first game in Vegas this year will be against Kansas State. Then after that, they will play one of either Baylor or Alabama in their second game. Alabama would, of course, also be a rematch from last year's Players Era Festival. And then their third game will be against one of the following 4 teams: Creighton, TCU, Miami, or Michigan. So it is possible Gonzaga will end up playing Michigan in a rematch of last year's championship game in the tournament. And of course, now we'll be playing them without Dusty May as the head coach. It is worth pointing out, as we're recording this right now, that it has already been reported that nothing has been confirmed on either side here, but it has been reported that Michigan is planning to name Mike Boynton, one of their assistant coaches, as the interim head coach for Michigan this upcoming season while they look for a more permanent coach. It's also been reported by Matt Norlander that they may end up just making Mike Boynton the head coach. Like they might remove the interim tag or not even have it on for very long and just let him be the guy. Boynton was the head coach at Oklahoma State from 2017 to 2024. He was a high-level recruiter. That's how they landed Cade Cunningham, the number 1 overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, and one of the most successful players currently in the NBA, an all-star MVP caliber player. And now Boynton, despite high-level recruiting at Oklahoma State, He went 119 and 109. So not a super successful head coach, but again, he's got a lot more resources behind him at Michigan than he had while with the Pokes at Oklahoma State. But the reason I talk about this is because the transfer portal window for college basketball players has changed with regards to coaches leaving the program. In the past, if a coach retired or took another job or was fired or whatever, the team immediately triggered a 30-day transfer portal window. From the moment the coach was fired, retired, whatever it was, 30 days, that those players had the ability to enter the transfer portal. That window has shrunk from 30 days to 15 days, but more crucially than that, it starts 5 days after a new coach is brought on. That is a huge difference from what it was previously. Now, with Dusty May leaving, these players cannot enter the transfer portal today or tomorrow. When Mike Boynton is officially announced as the interim head coach, which might happen later today as I'm recording this on Monday, it might happen Tuesday, it might happen Friday, it might happen next week. When that happens, 5 days after that is when that 15-day transfer portal window opens up. So it is enough time for Boynton to be able to try to convince these guys to stay. Summer workouts have already started. This team has already gotten together. They've already practiced, sweat together, gotten together for team meals, things like that. Like there's already camaraderie building. And now they have more of an opportunity to continue that camaraderie while trying to make sure that they don't get poached. Because the other thing I'm going to tell you right now, these dudes have fielded phone calls. Trey McKenney's been called. LJ Cason's been called. Mustafa Diam's been called. All of these guys have been called as soon as Dusty May's announcement was made public, because it is a dog-eat-dog world, and you are out there trying to make every possible move to make your roster better. So let's talk about what that could look like for Gonzaga, because, again, the Zags have done this. When Tony Bennett retired at Virginia, he tried to do so at a time of the year in late October when he wouldn't cost Virginia any of the players on the roster. The only player who entered the transfer portal was Jalen Worley. Worley ended up committing to Gonzaga, sat out for that season, and then played last year and was a huge part of Gonzaga's success. So they are certainly willing to make the kind of moves necessary to better the roster. And with needs on this roster, they got multiple spots open. They got multiple guard spots that they need to fill on this roster. Trey McKenney and LJ Cason stand out to me as players that could really, really benefit Gonzaga next season. McKenney's a 6'4" rising sophomore shooting guard. Last year for Michigan, the national champions, he averaged 10 points, shot 39% from three. That was on 4.5 attempts per game. LJ Cason's a 6'2" combo guard, so he's a little bit smaller, but he can play the 1 or the 2. He's going to be a junior this upcoming season. Last year for Michigan, he averaged 8.5 points, 2.5 assists, shot 40% from three on about 3 attempts per game. Both those guys would be great fits. Great fits. McKenney would immediately start at the 2, push Harwell to the bench. You'd have St. Superi, McKenney, and Davis Fogel, an incredible, high-scoring, high-octane offense for Gonzaga, with Harwell providing some defensive oomph coming off the bench. LJ Cason might start too, and if not, he would play a huge role coming off the bench for this team. Both those guys would be instantly immediate contributors for Gonzaga and would boost this roster significantly next season. Elliot Cadeau is not a fit. He's a pure point guard. I don't think Gonzaga will even pursue him. And if they did, there is just zero chance that that's going to make sense for him coming over to Gonzaga. All of the transfers that Michigan added, all of them are technically eligible to re-enter the portal. None of them really fit either. They're all bigs. Michigan brought in J.P. Estrella, who's a 6'11" big man from Tennessee, Jalen Reed, a 6'10" big man from LSU, and then Mustafa Diam, who's a 7'1" big man from Cincinnati. Gonzaga was actually connected to Diam before they landed Masamba Diop. They're too similar of players. It wouldn't make sense for Gonzaga to go after any of them. So really the targets out of the transfer portal for Gonzaga would be Trey McKenney and LJ Cason. Those are the most obvious ones by a considerable margin. McKenney, if he does enter the transfer portal, is going to command millions and millions of dollars. Anybody who has room in their backcourt is going to try to get him. Cason, maybe not quite as desirable, but again, if he were to enter the portal, he would have no shortage of suitors either. So Gonzaga would have some competition here, but they got some Jack Cahill money burning a hole in their pocket, and these are some of the best guards potentially available that they could go after at this point. So I'll be interested to see if they try to make a push, or of course, if these players even enter the transfer portal at all. There's a pretty real chance that they feel good about the contracts they have at Michigan and they end up staying, and it doesn't end up becoming an issue for Michigan or an opportunity for Gonzaga. But again, it's not just the transfers. Gonzaga could also go after the 2026 recruiting class for Michigan. They're not beholden to a transfer portal. They can decommit at any time. There's some players that might make some sense for Gonzaga there. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, folks, workplace chaos can show up at any time. And the problem is that finding the right candidate, it can take a lot more time than most businesses can really afford. And that's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location. And finding the right person can make all of the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. Some of the best moves organizations make, they aren't always the splashiest ones. Sometimes it's just finding the person who fits exactly what the team needs at the right time. And we talked about him earlier. That's exactly what Jalen Warley was for Gonzaga. Not the splashiest move, but a player who fit perfectly with Gonzaga's system. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. It's less stressful, it takes less time, and you get more results. So when you need the right person to cut through the chaos, that's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? That's a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're somebody who never misses an episode, it's time for you to make it official. Join the Locked On Everyday Club where you get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more. It's all built for our most loyal fans. Just go to lockedonzags.supercast.com or click the link in the show notes to learn more and join your team's community. Still talking about the seismic move in the college basketball world with Michigan head coach Dusty May, fresh off a national championship, leaving the Wolverines to go take the head coaching job in Dallas with the Mavericks, an NBA job here. Not something you see very often, by the way. Larry Brown in 1988 did this move fresh off of a national championship to go coach in the NBA. That was the last time it had happened in football or basketball until Jim Harbaugh did the same thing at Michigan a few years ago. And now you're seeing it happen again at Michigan with Dusty May here. A surprising move, to say the least. We talked about what it might mean for Gonzaga going hunting for some of their transfers, or some of their players who might enter the transfer portal, I should say, notably shooting guard Trey McKenney and combo guard LJ Cason. But perhaps the other area maybe worth even more keeping an eye on is Michigan's incoming recruiting class. Because again, like I said, they're not beholden to a transfer portal window. They don't only have 15 days to make a decision. Now, it sort of depends on the timing. If they're enrolled in classes and you know, started, if they've started classes, I do think that does result in them having to enter the transfer portal. So they may end up being transfers. They may end up being just players who can decommit and look elsewhere. Either way, they're players that could very much, they don't have those ties as much. Like Trey McKinney's, you know, he spent last year there. He won a championship there. He probably has friends there. Maybe he has a significant other there. Same thing with LJ Cason. That's a little bit harder to pry away. But incoming freshmen, like, it's possible that they've arrived on campus and thought, oh, I don't know if this is the fit for me. And now they have an out. Now they have an opportunity to leave and go look somewhere else, especially because the Wolves are going to come calling. They, like I said, they already are as we're recording this right now. So while Trey McKinney and LJ Cason are the obvious targets that are currently players at Michigan, looking at the incoming class, there's some pretty significant targets that Gonzaga could go after here as well. We'll just list all of the freshmen for this team at this point. Number one is Brandon McCoy. And look, we're not going to spend a lot of time here. Brandon McCoy is a top 10 player in this class. He's a point guard. He can play the two, but he is a point guard. I don't think McCoy's going anywhere. I think he's going to stay at Michigan, but if he does, he's going to be Gonzaga's going to be priced out right away. He's going to command a whole bunch of money. Really, really good player. I don't think this one's worth it, especially since he overlaps too much with what Saint-Superi does for Gonzaga. Next up is Quinn Costello. He's a 4-star power forward, 6'9", kind of stretch four. Just not what Gonzaga needs. They have a finite amount of money to spend, and I don't think they're going to spend it on a power forward like Costello, so I wouldn't consider him a particularly appealing target for Gonzaga. He's a good player, but I don't think he's going to be on the Zags' radar. Next up is Lincoln Cosby. Cosby's a 6'8" small forward. He's the 47th ranked player in the 2026 class, so right around where Luka Foster is ranked. He's from Montverde Academy, which is the same place that Filip Petrusev played and the same place that both the Nembhards played as well. So Gonzaga does have some connection with that high school over in Florida. I think they could check in here. He's a small forward. He is 6'8", but again, you could probably have him be a backup 3. He could play that position, slide Davis Fogel down to the 2, which is where you're kind of lacking depth right now. Certainly a player that with his pedigree and the fact that Gonzaga has a connection with his high school, I would keep an eye on Lincoln Cosby here. He's somebody that if he were to decommit, I could see Gonzaga making a push. Joseph Hartman is next. He's a 4-star combo guard. He's 97th in the recruiting class, so much closer to where Sam Funches is ranked in this 2026 class. 6'6" guard. I mean, he's a shooting guard. He's listed as a shooting guard. He's a 4-star recruit. He's maybe not somebody you'd expect to be an immediately impactful player. Just not a spot where Gonzaga has a lot of depth right now. You know, they have Mario, they have Fogel, they have Harwell, they have the incoming freshman, Joanna Kangahawa from France, as well as Luka Foster, but adding a player like Hartman, again, I don't know how much he's a little bit more like a Kangahawa would be or like Luka Foster would be, where you're not sure how much he's going to contribute right away. I think Gonzaga's probably looking for somebody who's a bit more of a veteran player there, but you never know. Certainly they have been on a youth movement kick this offseason. That is undeniable. So perhaps they'll make a play here if Hartman were to become available. A lot of that same analysis applies to Malachi Brown, a 4-star small forward. He's 6'5", so he's kind of a 2-3 hybrid. He's 148th in the recruiting class. So again, not super valued by 247 Sports' rankings, but Michigan obviously brought him in for a reason. So somebody to keep an eye on, but again, probably not the biggest priority for Gonzaga at this point. The last player in Michigan's recruiting class definitely interests me, though. And he doesn't fit a need for Gonzaga's immediate roster, but he is somebody who is from Spain, and he played for Unicaja Malaga, which is the same club that Mario Saint-Superi played for, the same club that currently rosters Killian Tilly. And this player is Marcus Moeller, and Moeller did not play for the top-level club in Malaga, but he played through their youth levels. So he's seen Killian Tilly playing with the top club. He likely overlapped in some capacity with Mario Saint-Superi. I don't know whether it was directly or more indirectly. Maybe they just knew each other, but they may have even played together. So Marcus Moeller, he's a 7'3" big man. 7'3" Danish big man playing in Spain, playing for Malaga. This is not a need on Gonzaga's immediate roster. Obviously, they have Masamba Diop, they have Braden Huff, they have Isan Almansa, they have Sam Funches, they have Parker Jefferson. If Gonzaga were to go after Moeller, obviously, again, because they have that connection with Mario, with Killian Tilly, with just Spanish countries in general, I could see that being an appealing target for them. If they do go after him, I think it probably is a sign that maybe they're not as confident about Isan Almansa getting a waiver to be eligible for this upcoming season, because then you go after somebody like Moeller, and then he can be your backup center behind Masamba Diop. It can still allow Funches to be more of a developmental player this year. Jefferson can be a little bit more of your backup 4, and you're kind of set in that regard. Moeller's also a little bit of a developmental piece too, so Gonzaga could still go after him and just accept that they're going to have a lot of young bigs on the roster. But he's one to keep an eye on, just because Gonzaga's not going to waste their time going after players they don't think they can get. But if they feel like Moeller is attainable, I could see them at least trying to make a push here, at least make some phone calls, assuming he ends up becoming available. Last thing I want to talk about here is the Ryan Nembhard of it all. Ryan Nembhard, of course, played his rookie season with the Dallas Mavericks last year. He was undrafted out of Gonzaga despite a phenomenal senior season. For Dallas, he played 60 games, started 27 of them, again, as an undrafted rookie, averaged 6.5 points and 5.3 rebounds per game, assists per game. In his final game in a Dallas uniform, and Jason Kidd's final game as the head coach for the Mavericks, Nembhard dropped 23 assists, which set a Mavericks rookie record for assists in a game. Actually broke the record set previously by Jason Kidd when he was a rookie back in 1994. So kind of a poetic way for the season to end and for Kidd's tenure to end as Dallas's head coach. And now Nembhard, who does have a $2.1 million team option, but we are widely expecting that Dallas will pick up the team option. Now Nembhard heads into his second season in the NBA, being coached by Dusty May. It's hard to say that's a better fit for him because being coached by one of the best pass first point guards in NBA history is obviously going to be good for Nembhard's development. But Dusty May did some really good work last year with Elliot Cadeau, who is a sub 6 foot point guard who was very much a pass first point guard for Michigan last year. So May has coached this kind of player before. And I think that is appealing for Nembhard to have a coach who I think has shown the ability to get a lot out of these undersized point guards. So I'm curious to see how this ends up playing out for Nembhard with Dallas this upcoming season. And the final point I'll make, Boynton probably would have been the coach who got this head coaching or this interim tag from Michigan regardless. But I wonder how Justin Joyner is feeling right now. For those who don't know, Justin Joyner was an assistant for 7 years at St. Mary's, and then 2 years ago took an assistant coaching job at Michigan under Dusty May, was there the last 2 years and left this offseason to take the head coaching job at Oregon State. His wife is a coach at Oregon for the soccer team, so he may have ended up coming out here regardless because he wanted to be in the Pacific Northwest and he wanted to be near his family. But if he thought there was a chance that Michigan would have given him that interim tag and he could suddenly become the head coach of a Big Ten team like Michigan, I think he might be kicking himself right now. Again, I think Boynton might have gotten the job anyway, but one of the first things I thought of when I saw this news about Dusty May on Monday morning. Folks, we're going to move on, switch gears here for our final segment. 247 Sports, they updated their 2027 recruiting class rankings, and somewhat shockingly, one of Gonzaga's top targets fell despite a really strong summer performance. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. You got an app for accounting, an app for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them actually talk to each other. And that's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of having to manage software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent, it's about having everyone work together towards the same goal. That's true in sports just like it is in business. And one thing that really stands out is when you see an organization that has a coordinated effort across everyone to make it a massive success. Great organizations win because their operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/locked-on. That's odoo.com/locked-on. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Switching gears to close out the show, talking about 247 Sports' updated 2027 class rankings. And it's funny, we talked about the 2027 recruiting class not that long ago here on the Locked On Zags podcast. We talked about the lone commit thus far in the class of Dooney Johnson. We talked about Jalen Davis and Gene Roebuck and a few others who Gonzaga has been connected to in that class. And while part of that discussion specifically regarding Gene Roebuck was about how we think that whenever 247 Sports updates their rankings, he's likely going to move up because of how strong his performance has been. Well, it was less than 24 hours after that show that 247 announced they were planning to announced that they had in fact updated their 2027 class rankings. Understandably, the timing made sense for 247. They waited until kind of the shoe circuit of the summer was over. That would be the Under Armour circuit, the Nike EYBL circuit, the Pangos All-American camp, the NBPA Top 100 camp, Session 7, which is where Davis was. Again, there's so many different events and tournaments and circuits and camps and various different things that take place during the live evaluation period in May and into June. And it is a really valuable time to evaluate this recruiting class as they head into their senior year and kind of look at where are we wrong, where are we right, where are some players who maybe are better than we think. Because a lot of times, I mean, so many players end up playing at high level programs like, Link Academy or Compass Prep or Prolific Prep or wherever, but a lot of players still play at their normal high schools, and you don't get to see how they play against high-level competition, how they play against the best high schoolers in the country. And getting the opportunity to see that can really dramatically change the evaluation on certain prospects. All that to say, 247's latest class rankings for 2027 were, for the most part, good regarding Gonzaga's players, with a notable counterexample. We'll talk about that in a second, but we'll start with the committed player in the 2027 class. That is Dooney Johnson, a 6'7" wing from Milwaukee Juneau High School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Johnson took a very big leap in their rankings. He went from number 43 overall to number 30, jumped 13 spots from 43 to 30. He was one of, I think, 4 or 5 players in the top 30 to move up 10 or more spots. The composite rankings for 247, which those factor in On3 and ESPN and 247's kind of combine them all together. They have him 26th. So again, 30th by 247, 26th in the composite. So Johnson's kind of sitting pretty right in that top 25, top 30 range in this 2027 class. And he really did himself a lot of favors this summer out on the circuit. He played really well at the Pangos All-American camp in early June in Las Vegas. He was a standout from that. I had a handful of people who were there reported afterwards. He looks like a potential future McDonald's All-American, like he's that level of player in this class. He played very well at the MBPA Top 100 camp, where he was teammates with Gonzaga target Gene Roebuck, shot 39% from 3 there. Again, he went from 6'5" to 6'7", and he was already a big combo guard, and now he's like a huge combo guard. Whether he can truly play the point at the college level is still a bit of a question, but now it's less of a concern because he's 6'7". If he has even a moderate amount of point guard skills as a secondary creator, that is massively valuable because he can play the 3, he can play the 2 or the 3. Tobias Bass of The Athletics spoke about him recently, as well as one of his highlights. I think it was from the MBPA camp, from one of the events that he was at. And he said, like, he looks like one of the best perimeter freshmen Gonzaga's ever had. Says he's really switchable defender, can guard 1 through 4, and has a lot of playmaking chops. So not a surprise to see him move up the rankings. He has been a steady presence in this class for a long time, and Gonzaga got themselves a real good one when they landed a commitment from him back in October. Looking at the players Gonzaga is still pursuing in this class. Next up is Jalen Davis, 6'3" combo guard from Bremerton, Washington. Davis has been all over the place, had a phenomenal summer he played in Europe at the Adidas Next Gen tournament. I believe that was in Greece. He also played in Italy for a time. He played in Session 7 in Arizona, where he scored 39 points against Millennium High School. He's played at NBPA as well. And yet, somewhat surprisingly, despite having such a phenomenal summer and really proving himself against high-level competition, Davis actually dropped 1 spot. It's not a significant drop. He was number 15. Now he's number 16. Really, it seems like it was more about Darius Wobbington, a 6'11" center from Phoenix, who moved up 13 spots and just passed Davis on the list. But I was a little surprised. I mean, Davis squared up head-to-head against Aiden Diggs, who's the number 4 ranked player in this class, in that game against Millennium, and Davis scored 30 in the first half. Millennium, as a team, scored 26. I'm not saying you should change your rankings based on one game. I'm saying it's a little surprising that Davis fell after that level of performance. Houston, Oregon, Washington, many other high-profile programs are heavily involved in Davis, but Gonzaga loves this kid. They would love to keep him in state, but move him across the state out to Spokane and bring him over to Gonzaga. He is a prolific talent and somebody who's going to be one of the best high school players in the country and certainly in the state of Washington next year at Bremerton. And then next up is Gene Roebuck. We've already hinted at him a few times. Roebuck had a great summer, scored the ball really well. He's a high-level shooter, high-level scorer, teamed up with Dooney Johnson, also went overseas to Italy to participate in one of the events over there. And yet, for some reason, 247 Sports dropped him 10 spots from number 53 to number 63. And this is a big departure from where he's at in the composite rankings. The composite rankings have Roebuck 49. And yet 247 has him way down at 63. I think Rivals or On3, one of them has him in their top 30. Like, there's a big difference in how 247 has evaluated Roebuck. For what it's worth, I forgot to mention that the composite rankings for Jalen Davis have him 19th. So everybody's kind of right in that range, the 15 to 20 range for Davis. But for Roebuck, there's a lot of disparity on how everybody feels. And once you get farther into the rankings, of course, you're going to see more disparity. And that's just how it goes. You know, like-minded, intelligent people can watch a player and come away with different evaluations. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it is a little bit surprising considering how much praise Roebuck has gotten for his shot making, his scoring, what he did at La Mirada High School in California last year, to see him not only drop 10 full spots at 247 Sports. The staff loves this kid. They brought him in for an official visit against Texas Southern on the opening day last season. According to him, they've been checking in with him like every other day for the last few months. They've visited him on campus. They're hoping to have him back out on campus. They love this kid. And if they can get him, I know UCLA is invested, Cal's invested, USC. He's hoping to take a visit to Grand Canyon. Like, there's a lot of schools involved here, but Gonzaga loves this kid. And I think if they could get him on campus again, he might not be leaving without a commitment. And that would be a good thing for Gonzaga. Him and Johnson teamed up at NBPA, and it'd be pretty fun to see them on the same roster for Gonzaga as freshmen in the 27-28 season. All right, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or watch of the day. We got more fun stuff this week. We'll, of course, have you up to date on the NBA draft when it is done. See where Graham Ike, maybe Tyron Grant Foster and Jalen Worley, where those guys end up as well. More up to date on the transfer portal and other international targets that Mark Few and the Zags have zeroed in on. And next week, we'll be talking about the Pac-12 as that officially begins next Wednesday, July 1st. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.